So which DC characters would make good DPS heroes? Yo, my name is Gojibu. I'm a tank player. Been doing Marvel Rival videos and other sorts of content along those lines on my channel. Recently slipped more into the hero shooter space, and I've actually been recently talking about Marvel Rivals a ton and just, theoretical characters, what they could look like, their power sets, making move sets. And earlier this week, I released a video about what a couple tanks in Marvel might look like. So I've been thinking on the other end of the spectrum, what a group of DPS heroes for DC might look like. Now, just to be clear, DC doesn't have any concrete plans. There's no rumors or anything of doing a hero shooter, even though I very much feel they should, and they kind of have with Gotham City Imposters in the past. But I mean, either way, I digress. DC could do numbers if they ended up doing a hero shooter, man, especially with their rogues and their hero gallery. I feel like they have way better villains than Marvel. On top of that, they have better magic users, and in all honesty, looking through the kind of list that I got here, I was only going to bring 5 characters for the DPS role. I ended up bringing 8, and that's kind of shortcutting it. Technically, I'm bringing 11 with the different options I got, but it's kind of just, there's so many different options when it comes to DC, dude. So much variety when it comes to power set, when it comes to magic, when it comes to, telepathy, when it comes to things along those lines. It's really cool just seeing all the different heroes that DC could utilize. And I mean, again, just getting into it, I did another video earlier with the first tank and strategist in the game, which would be Superman and Batman respectively. I feel like Batman does work well in the strategist role, and it's kind of a funny thing that his rogues and his apprentices end up fitting better into the duelist role than he does. But either way, the first character I brought here is Wonder Woman, and I'd kind of have her, I mean, again, she'd be a very, very short range. I think she'd be a brawler, absolutely. I wouldn't want her to focus on sword combat. I saw a video that discussed something along the lines of using her lasso and utilizing like WWE moves, wrestling moves for her moveset, and I absolutely love that pitch. I would love a Diana that's more focused on like maybe subduing people than trying to KO them. I know absolutely she does have that whole warrior thing. She doesn't have a no-kill rule, and I totally don't have a problem with that. I feel like, again, it's not an issue with her specifically, but again, I do think that she should have a approach where maybe she does try to grapple people more than anything, and maybe as a last resort kind of deal, that's when she gets more lethal. But again, for the sake of a hero shooter, I feel like they could kind of ignore that, turn the personality of female Conan up to like 11 if they really want to. So I mean, if they want to go that route as well, the WWE moves and the lasso thing still works just as well. They could use her tiara as like a homing attack, like Moon Knight's crescent darts. And then for her ultimate, I'd love if she had maybe not a giant sword, but maybe a reference to one, just because her absolute run uses a giant sword, and she looks really cool with it, dude. And I know I just went on and on about her using the lasso and a tiara and not trying to be lethal, but for her ultimate, I absolutely would want her to take out the giant sword that she has in the absolute version and use that. I think it would be great if she does usually in her moveset try to be more restrained, try to be a little more like grapple and subduing oriented, and then for her ultimate, it's kind of like, all right, I had enough, and then takes out a giant sword and just goes absolutely ape on everybody, dude. Cleaving through people, just a massive damage buff. Maybe she could get free flight while she does that, because normally she does have free flight. On top of that, I forgot her bracelets could absolutely work as deflection. I know they're not bracelets, I forget exactly what they're called, but either way, those could work really well for deflection. I'd make that like a timing thing, like a parry type deal, but either way, those would be really cool for deflection. On top of that, I didn't even think of that. Then for the next pick I got is Etrigan. So he is a demon that's usually aligned on the side of good. I would really want him to keep the whole rhyming gimmick that he has. I think he'd be like a Hellfire-based supernatural attacker. I'd give him spells. I'd give him like, and again, this is where I want to talk about the supers that I envision for DC and how this could stand out. But either way, Etrigan would be great before I lose my train of thought. And again, the fact that he can cast spells is really useful. Again, I was recently rewatching the Justice League show, and I totally missed the fact that, I guess I missed it when he was younger, that he could cast spells, and he totally did that ice thing on the guy. So he can use a variety of spells, apparently. So I think that makes his kit, hey, even more ranged and even more of a variety type deal. I think he can absolutely stand in for characters like John Constantine. I think that the whole thing with DC is that they do have a lot of magic users, but they have so many, it can actually kind of get cramped. As I was going through which magic users should go into the duelist role, I was kind of running out of space, in all honesty, and it kind of came down to like a tie between Etrigan, Zatana, John Constantine, and again, those are just the ones that I can narrow it down to, like the biggest ones. That's not even mentioning the fact that we want to do like more underrated characters, which is kind of the point of these games. But Either way, I keep getting sidetracked. Etrigan would be great. I think the Hellfire would be a really unique status effect to utilize. I know normally in games they have like fire that just does a burn effect over time, but maybe Hellfire could do something different. Maybe it could decrease the damage that you deal, or maybe it, I don't know, decreases your health for a couple seconds unless you get it like debuffed or something like that. But I'd want something that makes Hellfire a little bit different. I would definitely want you to know the difference between if you have the normal fire status on you and the Hellfire status, because that's kind of what makes Etrigan so strong and such a threat. Apparently Hellfire is something that is a lot more dangerous than normal fire. I think it burns the very soul or something along those lines, but either way, Etrigan would be really tight. I don't think I'd want him to be along the lines of Hulk, where if he does lose all the HP in the Etrigan form, he goes back to his human form. I think I just want him KO'd after that. I think just Etrigan on his own is probably the best way to take the character. And as far as the super, I in all honesty don't know what the super could look like, but it did make me start thinking of what supers should look like in this game and how this game would kind of differentiate itself from rivals. I think having Injustice style supers in the game, specifically in the DPS role, would be really great. Now granted, not every character can have a move where they take 4 people into a cutscene and, you know, do a million things. So I think if there is a character that has a one-on-one or like a grab you and like just focus on you, like a single target type skill, I think a lot of characters in this game should have Injustice style skills. So I think they should try to focus on DPS characters, maybe not having finishers or fatalities or something, but something like cinematic when you either pop an ultimate or get a KO, something that makes it like very epic. Because again, Etrigan wasn't included in the Injustice games, which I feel like was a huge miss, and I feel like Etrigan is owed a certain amount of flair, just because again he does have a certain knack for showmanship, even if the character doesn't seem like it. Even the fact that he's just rhyming all the time makes him very entertaining. So I feel like this is a very good way that DC could stand out if they were to do a hero shooter. Do something like those Injustice style supers. Maybe not, again, take 5 whole people into a cutscene, have a whole team watch a 10-second cutscene about one guy when he gets his ultimate off, but something along those lines would make the game a lot more hype, a lot cooler to watch, and again, it just adds a little bit more replayability, and again, not even mentioning the fact that you can add bonus effects to that stuff to make it even cooler to watch. Then for the next pick, I got Static Shock, a free-flying electricity-based attacker. He'd be able to make his own discs and platforms. I kind of have this pitch in mind where he can use those little, I forget exactly what it's called, that thing he rides around on. I should have looked it up before I started filming, but oh well. Utilizing that, kind of just throwing them around the map, kind of just hitting them with an electric pulse and then having them float around so his team could use them, kind of get them to higher ground. I could picture something really cool, like a green arrow on your team, and maybe as like a grappling arrow. Static Shock kind of levitates one of his little platform things. Green arrow could kind of hook off of it or use it as a vantage point to snipe from. So just a really good like utilization of his powers. On top of that, he could absolutely do some damage in the DPS role. I feel like there's not a lot of electric characters in either Marvel or DC. I know that there's probably a good bit, but again, ones that come off the top of the head, and Static Shock is one of the ones that I feel like is a little bit more underrated, hasn't really had a ton of the spotlight recently, but is a very well-renowned character. So I feel like if you did do the game, I feel like Static should be on the launch roster for the DPS. On top of that, it just adds variety to the game, adds variety to the roster in terms of powers, in terms of what the character should do, because on top of that, I feel like one way DC can beat rivals in terms of their characters, getting into that whole topic again, is let them have their powers, and let them utilize them however they may be. Let Static have 1 or 2 abilities that might be support oriented. Let him, you know, have something that can help out his teammates instead of just damage. Have Etrigan do something that can, you know, buff his teammates or maybe buff himself, something aside from just, again, damage. Yes, there's fun ways to incorporate that. There's fun ways to make that playstyle work, just the constantly doing damage, but I feel like, again, it makes the game a lot more fun. It makes it last a lot longer too, and makes it a lot more rewarding if you get to use these guys and their abilities and kind of just make the best of situations that you're in, like the hero would, utilizing their powers. So crap, if I'm getting jumped, maybe I do need a dip like Static would. Maybe I need to make an extra platform so that my support can get away and she can heal me. and then I can get back into the fight. So again, giving players those moments where they're like, oh wow, I used the character's powers and I did that, that's what makes somebody feel cool. I feel like that's where the strength in these hero shooters that actually have, like, again, actual superheroes in them, that's kind of where the appeal should come from. That's the power fantasy with playing a lot of superhero games like Arkham, like Spider-Man. You get to play and feel like these heroes, and I feel like Rivals is kind of leaning into that area, but if DC beats them to the punch here, I feel like they could absolutely rock it. But getting into the next one, this is kind of where I run into a little bit of trouble. So Batman, like I said, does fall into the strategist role, but I did want some rep for his side in the DPS role. I'm kind of torn between like these three different pitches, man. These are all his sidekicks, and I honestly don't know which one to put into the duelist role. So I got one for Robin, which would of course be based off of Damian and a little bit of Tim Drake as well. It'd be a melee range, stealth-based assassin character with a few projectiles. So obviously in the case of Tim, you know, it might be a bow staff. If it's focused on Damian, it would be a blade. But again, he would focus primarily on doing what a duelist version of Batman would do, pretty much playing like an Arkham version of Batman, focusing on trying to stay in the shadows, focusing on trying to get picks, an assassin type character like, you know, I'm trying to think of other assassin characters like Genji, like Psylocke, along those lines. So somebody who's looking for those opportunities. But again, that's the first approach I have, a very aggressive, very brawler type approach. Doesn't really focus a lot on investigating, can maybe reveal people or something like that, maybe like a detective vision ultimate, but the whole team gets it. But that would be a really cool thing to utilize. The next one would be Red Hood, which is actually one of my favorite approaches to the Batman sidekick. I really like Red Hood, man. He is my favorite of the Robins, so I had a very strong bias towards this guy. I'd have him as a medium to short range pistol slash AR brawler, which is again a very unique fighting style. I feel like I haven't seen in a lot of games. A brawler who utilizes pistols, kind of utilizing hand-to-hand combat, utilizing the kickback from his pistols to like pistol whip people and things along those lines, trying not to go for, you know, lethal blows, but maybe you could use dummy rounds or something along those lines. But again, if they're in the space of a hero shooter, I feel like they wouldn't have any trouble taking the no kill rule away from these guys. So I feel like Red Hood would be really at home. Along with that, he is a bigger dude, so you could have some tanking things for him as well. I know his bat symbol does have some stuff that like electrocutes people if they get too close, so maybe something with that. But along with that, I know he could have a really unique fighting style, and I think he'd fit even better into the DPS role because he usually doesn't do too much of his own detective work. He's still pretty good at it, but he's nowhere near as adept at it as Tim or maybe even Nightwing. But I feel like Red Hood is very aggressive and could fit into the whole role of the DPS very well. But again, since he doesn't have a lot of utility, I might hesitate to put him in here. Then the last one is Nightwing. He'd be a melee slash long range stealth approach with acrobatics. He is probably my best choice when it comes to the DPS role. I feel like, again, Nightwing is just so crucial to the DC universe at his own point. He's kind of split off from being a Batman thing. Of course, people associate him with Batman. They associate him as the first Robin, but I feel like Nightwing has kind of grown legs and kind of is able to stand on his own independent from the Bat at this point. And I feel like not giving him his own spot, kind of just making him a palette swap, might be doing his character a disservice. So in all honesty, as I'm writing this, I think Nightwing is probably going to be the best one to go for. He could do a ton of different things, man. He could have his little batons that he utilizes, the Scrimma, whatever they're called, bounce off people, ricochet off stuff. Again, the acrobatic approach is going to be flipping all over the place, zipping all over, and there's not a ton of acrobats in the DC universe from what I can recall here. So I don't think we'll have a ton of people flipping and dipping all over the place. We'll have flyers, of course, but people moving around, getting invulnerability while they roll. Oh god, that'd be awesome. A combat roll for Nightwing, and then you could throw the sticks or maybe combine them into a staff, and hey, maybe that could even work out and he could get a Tim skin. In all honesty, I just don't think Tim's making it in here, man. If they surprise us and do a Red Robin in the strategist role, I'd be really happy, but I think Tim's going to end up being a skin for one of these guys. But if I had to pick one, my vote is for either Nightwing or Red Hood, but I mean, in all honesty, I know they did Robin for Injustice 2, so that's kind of why I have him there. But hey, I mean, you guys let me know. Which of the Batman prodigies would you end up putting in the DPS role? Again, we got the Robin, you got the Red Hood, and you got the Nightwing. Again, I might just opt for like all three because again, I feel like this game's gonna have a lot of Batman rep as is, but if we're just gonna get one, I think I'd have to narrow it down to Nightwing, probably, just because of the significance of Nightwing, man. Even though I'm so biased with Red Hood, I know Nightwing has cemented himself, and he's kind of not really going anywhere, and he's kind of got to be in there, man. You owe it to the character. Next up is Flash, and I do not know which Flash it would be, man. I don't know if this is Wally or Barry. I mean, in all honesty, they could do costumes, and they could do like legacy costumes, change the voices up and everything. So maybe they could just keep the identity a secret. Maybe they could just have a bunch of different Flashes on release. Maybe it could be like what was it, multiverses, where they can have a couple different skins. So you can have Reverse Flash on launch, you could have Barry, you could have Wally. Hey, you could even do a bunch of different legacy Flashes like Jesse Quick, things along those lines. Be really cool. But Flash, he'd be momentum based, of course. I feel like the main struggle with Flash should honestly be to make sure you're being useful. I feel like he should have no problem going fast, so I wouldn't make the struggle controlling him or like making sure that you don't fly off the map. I would rather make the struggle with the character making sure your hits land, making sure you're not going too fast so that you avoid your shots and everything. Of course, he could have abilities so that where he's going faster, he can project lightning, he can do a bunch of different stuff along those lines. He can phase, he can, again, my immediate thing is just running past people and punching them, making sure you keep your momentum up while you can get into melee range. Maybe give him a slide, maybe give him something so that he can kick off of walls and keep his momentum going. I would want a character that prioritizes on not stopping once he starts moving, because if you stop, I think you're gonna have to restart, get your momentum back. And on top of that, for his ultimate, I think you could do a bunch of different things with this. I haven't heard anything about Quicksilver in Marvel Rivals, and I think it's in all honesty just a race to see who can implement a slowdown time feature for an ultimate first. Because in all honesty, Quicksilver can definitely make it work, but I think it works even better for Flash. Doing an ultimate where just everybody slows down, your teammate, the enemy team. Again, even if there's an opposite Flash in the team, if he doesn't pop his ult, then he'll slow down too. But something where just both teams have to stop for a little bit and Flash is the only one that can kind of move around the map would be really tight. Even if it's just for maybe 5-6 seconds where he can maybe get 1 or 2 kills, utilizing that and kind of helping your team reset or move them around the map while they're frozen would also be really sick. But Flash is an absolute need in the game. Again, I just don't know which one this would be, if it's Barry or Wally, but I'm going to lean towards Wally if they have to choose one, just because, again, been rewatching Justice League. Wally's on the brain, really good representation of the character, but I'd vote for Wally as the main Flash for this. Next up, we got Zatana. I would make her focus on silences, debuffs, stuns, and slows. I'd have her like kind of swap between a damage dealing mode and a support slash spellcaster mode. So maybe when she's in the spellcaster slash support mode, she kind of has a little bit of a slower walking stance as she's ready to cast spells while she's walking. Maybe she kind of takes out her wand, like shows that she's at the ready. But I'd want her like dealing mainly, you know, spells that just like little bursts of light and stuff like that that deal damage for her primary fire. Make that like one mode that she has. And then when she swaps over, that's when she gets, you know, frost spells that can slow people. That's when she gets silences that can prevent people from casting their abilities. That's when she gets like a reveal that could show all like invisible enemies in the area, or like a gravity spell that makes all flyers come back down for a little bit and they can't fly. So she could do a lot of cool stuff. Zatana's really OP, and I feel like, again, when it comes to magic users, Dr. Fate is the next biggest guy after Zatana, and I feel like Dr. Fate could fit really well into the support role, and I feel like that's kind of where he does belong ultimately. I know I could have put him in the duelist role, put Zatana in the strategist role, but in all honesty, I'm kind of a sucker for having girls in the DPS role and the tank role. They're normally shoved into the strategist role, and I kind of want to just do a little role reversal thing. Again, there's so many different magic users in the DC universe. If she doesn't make it into the DPS role, you could have Enchantress, you could have, again, John Constantine. You could have so many different characters in this role. I kind of wanted to put Dr. Fate in the strategist, do a little role reversal there, since Zatana is normally a little bit more aggressive when it comes to what she gets into. But either way, Zatana would be really sick also. Then next up is Hawk Girl, one of my personal favorites. Again, I've been telling you guys, I've been rewatching Justice League, so I got her on the brain, man. So she'd be a free-flying melee tank that would focus on rushing and closing the distance. So again, she's just super aggressive, really cool fighting style, and I don't think there have been a ton of melee flying characters that I've seen, at least in hero shooters. So this would be a really unique take to do. I don't know exactly how they design her. Maybe like have a helicopter mode so she can stay in one area, kind of just swing the mace, go crazy. I'd want her focusing on like flying drive-bys with the mace, which sounds really funny as I'm saying it out loud, but kind of just, again, building up momentum, swooping down, whacking them with the mace as you know, build that momentum, get to your peak, and then they kind of get displaced, go back up into the air, kind of circle the area. I feel like that's a really cool playstyle for a character. Obviously, maybe not focusing specifically on the drive-bys, but having a character that focuses on mobility in the air. So I'd give her a barrel roll. I'd give her a ton of things so that she could avoid damage while in the air. I'd want her to be like, again, since there are so many characters that can fly in DC, I'd want to make sure she could stand out. And since she has wings, since she's normally in the air, I would want her to be the best when it comes to mobility in the air. Just like Flash is going to be the unprecedented king of movement on the ground, I would want Hawkgirl to be that in the air. Then for the last pick I got today is Green Lantern, and it's going to be Hal Jordan or Guy Gardner. I am unsure which one I want to throw into the DPS role, man, because whoever doesn't go into the DPS role is probably going to go into the strategist role. I feel like, again, there should be a Green Lantern or at least a Lantern in every role. So, I mean, again, I put Jon Stewart in the tank role. I might have wanted to put Kilowog or Atrocitus or something like that to give the other Lantern Corps some rep, but either way, I wanted to give the Green Lanterns on Earth a shot first. So, I mean, Hal and Guy, I think Guy is automatically the better pick when it comes to DPS just because he's got such a brash attitude. But again, Hal is very iconic in the role of Green Lantern. I feel like he is arguably the most iconic Green Lantern, maybe next to John. I guess Hal's more iconic than John, but either way, I would have Green Lantern work with projection-based attacks. He'd set up traps. He'd kind of set like, and again, there's so many creative things you could do with the character, especially with Green Lantern. There's so many creative ways you could take the character. I would not be happy if they just did a guy that just does energy blasts and creates, like, I don't know, armor like a giant robot, or maybe just basic planes and giant baseball bats with the Green Lantern thing. I mean, again, the baseball bat sounds kind of funny, but you get what I'm saying. Green Lantern hasn't really been creative with his constructs for a while in the comics. There are some instances where he does some creative things, but in a lot of his other media, he hasn't really been the most creative when it comes to using the ring. So I don't know, man, maybe something where he makes an anchor point and where you can either like attach a chain to it so that way you have a mace that you can freely swing around that has physics, or maybe you could just leave that anchor point in the air and then it just drops, so you know, you make this giant thing and you can either swing it around like a mace or you just let it drop on people like a giant cartoon anvil or something like that. But again, Green Lantern has so many different things he can do well, so many different creative ways to engage with his power set. And again, I know you can't hook up something to the player's brain and like, okay, yeah, free will, think of whatever you want and Green Lantern will make it on the screen. No, obviously not. But I'm saying that there are so many different ways you can make this character fun to play and make him feel like the creative warrior that he should be. Again, I know it sounds cheesy. I know his main thing is willpower, but again, he's got to have something on the brain to where he can defend himself. And I'm really not happy with the Injustice approach to it. That's kind of why I called out the armor giant robot thing right there. So lame, just making giant planes and stuff, man. But yeah, the fighter pilot is gonna make constructs of giant planes. Yeah, no shit, dude. Either way, Green Lantern, sorry, it turned into a Green Lantern rant towards the end there. I'm just really disappointed with how they've done my man recently. The Green Lantern, they need their aura back, dude. Either way, those are the picks I got. I just wanted to bring a couple. DC should get on the hero shooter train if they haven't already. I can't think of a single good reason they wouldn't. There is competition in the hero shooter genre for the first time in like years, and I can't think of a reason why they wouldn't jump in on it, man. Again, now the fact that you've seen superheroes can bring an audience into a game and kind of help it at launch, why wouldn't you do that with your roster, man? Why wouldn't you do that with so many of these characters you have that are dormant? So many characters that, you know, you can utilize in different ways. Again, these are just heroes. I didn't even mention any villains on the list as I'm looking at this. I mean, Etrian kind of counts, but Either way, I didn't even mention any villains on the list, dude, and villains are one of the best things DC does. So, I mean, again, with the hero list, I haven't even gotten into a villains list, but by all means, that's all the time I got. This video is long enough as is. So if you guys want to see more content like this, if you guys want to see any other genres like Star Wars, DC, Pokemon, I'm thinking of a bunch of different categories and a bunch of different genres, how they could do their own hero shooters. I'm probably going to keep going with the DC ones as well. I will do full-blown hero pitches for Wonder Woman and Zatana soon. Just had a little bit of a brain fart this week and got really distracted with Thunderbolts. Really happy with that movie, which I'll have a review for soon, by the way. But either way, thank you guys for the support, and if you guys want to see anything else, by all means let me know in the comments. But otherwise, peace.